Hi there, it's Tracy Kiernan from Step by Step Painting, and this acrylic painting tutorial is going to show you how to paint dancing leprechaun feet. I'm doing this on an 11 by 14 inch canvas, and for this particular painting I am going to be using a template. I just found it way more helpful to draw the drawing on my tablet first and transfer it to the canvas. So basically I created this template on my tablet, printed it out, and sized it for this size painting, and I have that for you that you can print out as well and use. And I will be showing you how this transfers to the canvas. So if you've never seen it done before in one of my videos, I'll be demonstrating that. And of course, if you want to hand draw that, you are more than welcome to hand draw this. We're going to go over brushes and colors. So I am using a 3/4 inch flat wash brush, a number 4 round brush. Those two are Princeton Velvet Touch brushes, and they actually come in a pack of brushes, and a number 12 bright brush, which is like a 1/2 inch flat brush. And you can use any similar size. You don't have to use this exact brush. And the same goes with all the brushes that I use. You can use similar ones, and you don't have to use the exact ones. I used 9 colors in this tutorial, including Hooker's Green, Hue Permanent, Light Brilliant Yellow Green, Primary Yellow, Mars Black, Titanium White, and Light Blue Permanent. The 3 colors down here on the bottom were actually used for the rainbow. So the rainbow's optional. If you are going to do the rainbow, you're going to need Cad Red Medium, Cobalt Blue, and Dioxazine Purple, so you can get those colors in the rainbow. If you're not doing the rainbow, then you only need 6 colors for this painting. Let's go ahead and get started. So I'm using an 11 by 14 canvas, and I have it placed in vertical mode. And I'm going to start by just covering my canvas with blue and white paint. So this is light blue permanent and titanium white, and I have a 3/4 inch flat wash brush that I dipped in the water. On my palette, I'm going to mix both of those colors together. I like to not mix the colors all the way because I like to have like variations in that tint of blue. So our blue and white is going to mix together. It's going to make a much lighter blue. Our blue is already light, but adding more white into it's going to lighten it up. The background in this painting is just a very, very simple light blue color. Nothing super detailed about it because there's a lot of other details in this painting, so we're just going to have a basic background. I am going to maybe add a little bit of white towards the bottom, but it's not really going to be a super noticeable difference because this really just kind of blends together and kind of just looks the same regardless. So we could do the thing where we're just leaving like streaks of white that are unblended in the background, but that's really not going to be super noticeable in the end because of all the other things in this painting. So if you want to just paint this entire thing solid, everything the same color, that's fine too. But I am just going to make a little variation of lighter color towards the bottom because I like to do that. And when there's a sky, I like to make it a little bit darker at the top and a little bit lighter on the bottom. So go ahead and fill your entire canvas up. You can add a little bit of water to your brush. That helps to kind of thin the paint and spread it a little bit better so the background gets finished quicker. It also shouldn't be a very thick layer of paint. This is just our base color for the painting, just to get rid of all that white canvas. So while you are waiting for this to dry, you can, if you're using the template with me, go ahead and print it out. It's an 11 by 14 template, and it's going to print out in 2 papers. So this is what my traceables usually print out, especially if it's for the 11 by 14. There's usually at least 2 that you have to print out. Sometimes there's 4 depending on the design, and if you have a larger canvas, you may end up with 4 pieces that you have to put together like a puzzle. There's really no other way around that because we have a 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper that we got to fit on a larger canvas, so it just makes sense that it has to be stretched out. So you saw me cut on that dotted line. Usually there's going to be dotted lines on both of the designs, but I usually just like to cut one of them and then place it and connect the design together. And then just use a piece of regular tape, clear tape preferably, and tape your design together. Then I like to, and it depends on the design too, because sometimes these are just for the entire canvas, but there is another line down here that I'm going to cut. And really for this design, it doesn't really matter if we cut on that line or not, but that line does represent the size of the canvas, kind of. Sometimes the sizing is off just a little bit. And then for this one, I'm actually going to cut higher than that line because, and I'll show you what I mean by that when we place it on the canvas. So a lot of that, it just makes it easier to work with, so we don't have this big paper with like leftover blank spots that we have to maneuver around. So it's smaller, easier to work with. So then we have graphite paper. So you can buy this off of Amazon. It's not very expensive, and you can reuse this over and over again. So you want to make sure it's shiny side down, and then let's position this guy. So the line actually goes up here, but that's putting his shoes a little bit higher than I actually want. So I'm actually going to bring him down a little bit further, which is going to put us extending the legs up, but that shouldn't be too complex. But if you want to measure about 1.5 inches from the bottom of the canvas, that's kind of where the bottom of his the foot on the right, the bottom part of the heel is. About 1.5. You can make him go higher if you want. If you don't want to draw the rest of the legs, you can actually line him up to the very top and just make your grass taller or add more flowers under there. So I am pressing. This is just a regular pencil, and I'm just tracing the design. And some people like to tape this down to the canvas so it doesn't move. I just like to hold my hand firmly so that it doesn't move. But if you prefer to tape it down, you can. I also like to occasionally lift it up as I'm tracing. Sometimes I've done like the whole entire traceable and then realized that the shiny side was not facing down, so nothing was there, so I had to redo it. So you want to make sure that you are checking to make sure it's showing up, and you want to make sure you're doing this flat on the table. I used to recommend a dull pencil because the sharp pencil makes the line too light and thin, but this is kind of like a medium, it's not dull, but it's not sharp, if that makes sense. You want to just make sure you're pressing firmly so it shows up, but not too hard to where you're going to break the paper and go through the canvas. And then sometimes it's helpful to place like a book under your stretched canvas, and that really helps to like apply more pressure to it, especially since this is a stretched canvas, so it's hollow underneath. So that's something else you can try. So there's our drawing transferred, and that is basically how you use the traceables. And sometimes I go back and kind of make parts of it darker or kind of fix that heel because it was a little flat and not curved. So let's go ahead and start painting. I'm going to start with the shoes, and we have Mars Black and Titanium White and a number 4 round brush. Let's load the brush in the black. And let's load our brush by kind of twisting that brush. And when you twist the brush as you load it, it really just kind of distributes that paint on the bristles towards the end where we're really going to be using that. And this is a curvy shoe, so I'm just going to start by kind of a little bit outlining a little bit of the tip, the pointed tip, but then really just kind of fill it in. So it helps to just outline your shape and then fill it in. You want to kind of curve your strokes to go in the direction of the shape, and that's going to be helpful when we go back and highlight this shoe to really kind of pay attention to where those curves are. So you outline that area that you're going to fill in, and then you do kind of curved strokes that go in that direction. So occasionally I'll add just a teeny bit of water on my brush to kind of loosen that black. And then for the heel, outline it, curve, go around, and just fill that shape in solid. It could have made sense to paint his socks first, because we are going to have to go back and touch up this later when we paint the socks, but that's okay. So same thing for our shoe over here on the right. Outline and curve your brush to fill that shape in. For the heels, let's grab some titanium white. So I have about equal parts black and white. Mix it together. It's going to make a medium gray. We're going to do gray for the heels. That's because if we did black, it's not really going to stand out. But we could do white, but it kind of looks nicer with the gray, and then we can use the white to highlight. So basically, kind of the same thing. You want to sort of just outline your shape and then fill it in. So right here, it gets very thin. It kind of hugs the bottom. It curves. You might notice that my gray is kind of getting lighter in some areas and darker. It's because when I go to reload my brush, I'm grabbing white, and then sometimes I'll grab the gray. So I have some color variation in this. So we can just let that kind of blend together, and we create some natural highlights in the bottom part of his boot. So over here on the left part of his heel, added a little bit more white and just kind of let that blend with the gray right on the canvas. Right here, do you see how I curved that stroke? When you curve the stroke on his heel, that's going to make it look three-dimensional because our paint strokes are going in that curvy direction. And again, adding a little bit of white to my brush to let that kind of blend with the gray, give it that really pretty color variation. Twist your brush when you're going to get to the tip of the shoe, because that's a thinner line. It goes thin and then it goes thick again. You can go back with the white, and on the end of the heels, adding a little bit of white and just dragging that inwards is going to highlight that part a little bit and also help it to look a little three-dimensional. And then you might find that you have to go back and touch up some of the black areas. So I'm going to grab my black and go back and just make sure this shape is defined. And now that I have dark gray on my brush, so if you didn't have dark gray on your brush, grab a little bit of black and a little bit of that gray. It should just be a couple shades lighter than that pure black. And just go in there and kind of do these sort of contouring paint strokes with this dark gray. It might blend with that black, it might not. If your black is dried, you can still do this with this dark gray, but I'm just kind of loosely painting those curvy strokes, like how we painted the black and curvy, but we're going back with dark gray, but not going back all of it. That's going to give your shoe this sort of shiny look with that gray, dark gray. If you're doing this and you noticed, oh no, it looks too light, you can always go back and just add more black to it. But you can see that difference, that darker gray that's showing up. I'm going to take this a step further and grab white on my brush. I'm going to highlight some of this. I'm going to do a curve on this, the left part, back of his heel, and curve at the top. I'm going to pick a few places on the other boot to do these curves that are just going to follow that shape, the inner outline shape. And you don't want to do too many highlights, just a few, and it doesn't really matter. We're not really paying attention to where the light source is in this painting. Just a few curvy with the white, and that's going to give your boot a little bit more character and some highlight, shiny look. Then we can rinse the brush off and do pure white for the buckles. So you just want to be careful that we're not going to drag the black paint into this, but I'm just taking my white and I'm filling in the shape of the buckle. This one, we really only see the side of it. And those are going to be yellow later, but it was important to fill those white first so that the yellow will be nice and bright. So let's wait for that to dry a little bit, and then we can fill our sock in. So the sock is going to be striped. He's going to have light green stripes on his sock, but we can't do that until we fill this in white. And be careful not to drag any of the black paint into this. We will also need to touch up our boot because we might accidentally paint it over, and that's okay. Like paint that white over part of the boot, unless you're super careful. And then, so outline the shape of the sock. Down here is kind of an awkward area. Just fill that in solid white, go around the curve. And then when you get to the pant leg, you can actually drag this and overlap your line. And that's okay because we'll be painting that over with a darker green later. So there's our sock. So we'll need to let that dry before adding our green stripes to it. Well, let's go ahead and load our paint palette with the color Hooker's Green Hue. This is a dark green. And let's use our 4-round brush. So you might find that you'll need a bigger brush. You can even use that big 3/4 flat brush for this, but I just decided to keep my round brush. So kind of the same thing with these pant legs. Outline your shape and do these kind of curvy strokes in the middle to give it kind of that 3-dimension. These are going to have polka dots or another custom design if you want to do like stripes or shamrocks on his pants instead, or just leave the pants dark green. You're definitely welcome to change this. And so these go all the way up and then kind of bends a little bit and just kind of disappears off the canvas. And then go ahead and fill it in. I like to just kind of scribble my paint strokes if I'm filling big areas up. You can grab a little bit of the white and you can go in and kind of blend some of your white in with that green to give it highlight, but also give it that color. Since it's a lot of just solid green, we can take that white and just kind of gently blend to create some color variation in that green. So assuming maybe the light's hitting right here, so that part of the paint leg is lighter. So you see how it kind of made the right part of it lighter, the left part darker, just by scribbling some of that white in there and just letting it blend. And then can really just make sure this bottom part of the pant leg is nice and defined, and overlapping that sock. And then you'll go ahead and you'll fill in the other pant leg with the same technique. And on this one, I made it so the left side of the pant has the lighter color and the right side has the darker, so opposite from the other pant leg. But same thing, just apply your paint, kind of expressive paint strokes in the middle. I am using just a little bit of water to help get that color to flow, and the pant just kind of disappears at the top of the canvas. Grabbing green and white and just really kind of expressive scribbling or strokes to fill it in. I'm going to get more green on my palette, and that is not green, that's black, so we're going to get more green. We will be using more of the Mars black too, but right now just the green. I'm going to switch brushes here. I'm going to grab my 12 bright brush, and we could have been using this brush all along for the pant legs. I'm going to just go back and use the end of that brush to really define the edge of these pants so it's a nice and smooth line all the way up, and then I can kind of make sure all my canvas is covered. But using the tip of the brush to help make sure that line is nice and smooth is a little bit easier to do with this brush than the round brush. So you can see just using the tip to outline the end and fill it in. I don't want to really mess with the light and darks there too much. And then we can take our black and our round, and we can touch this part of the boot up, which actually might have made more sense after we added the stripes, but that's okay. Just going in, making sure that shape is nice and defined. So next, let's load our paint palette with brilliant yellow-green, and we'll be using this color to paint stripes on his socks and the number 4 round brush all cleaned and rinsed off. And so we don't really have a lot of space to work with, but we can kind of still add a design on his socks. If you want to change the design to polka dots instead of stripes, you're welcome to. If you want to change the color, and then you can even make them solid light green if you want. Was able to fit 3 stripes in there and go around those kind of awkward curves of the boot. If you need to touch that up with black again, you can do that as well. And then I'm going to paint the buckles of his boots yellow. So we have primary yellow on our paint palette and our number 4 round brush that's cleaned and rinsed off. I know you don't see it, but I am wiping my brush off after I rinse it with the water. So I have like a towel on my lap when I paint to make sure I'm wiping my brush off. You generally want to do that so that there's not too much water on your brush when you go to reload the paint, because otherwise that water will pool down your bristles and then cause a mess. So we want to make sure we don't have a dripping brush when we paint. I did add a little tiny notch on each of the buckles, kind of mixed with the black a little bit, but that's fine. We have a little bit of a darker yellow right there. So I did 2 little notches on the buckles. And I'm going to highlight the buckles with white. So kind of like what we did with the boots, just kind of picking some corners and just doing like a quick sort of highlight thing on your buckles with the white. Sometimes, like if it's mixing too much with your yellow, you might want to wait for the yellow to dry and then go back and highlight it with your white, and then touching up my boot curves again with the black. So if the heels of his boots are dry, we can go back and highlight those a little bit more. I'm going to get my round brush, wipe the brush off, grab the white, and then go back right here. I did this earlier, but I'm going to add just a little bit more white on the side, on the edges, and that's really going to help highlight that heel, give it a little bit more of that three-dimensional look. And then a few little light highlights on the curves on the bottom. We are going to transition to the grass next. So I am using a 12 bright brush for the grass, and I'm going to start dark and then kind of work my way up to lighter colors. So on your palette, mix your green with a little bit of black. Just you only need a tiny bit of black for that. And it's going to darken your green, and you just want to load that dark green on the tip of your 12 bright brush on your flat brush and hold it to use just the end of the brush and start painting your grass. So I am dragging these paint strokes from the bottom edge of the canvas and just dragging it up in different angles. So these grass blades are not touching the left boot because his foot is kind of higher in the ground. But our grass blades that are going to be over here on the right, some of them will overlap, but we're going to start out by not overlapping anything just yet. This is still the first dark layer. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to paint a patch of grass, dragging my brush from the bottom edge of the canvas and upwards. And you're just kind of changing your angle. Some of my grass blades are going towards the right, some of them are angled a little bit towards the left, some of them are going more vertical. And then, so you want to kind of think about his foot is going to be touching some of this grass. So I'm actually making my grass kind of sway around the heel of the boot, if that makes sense. This is actually going to be up a little bit, and we can start kind of overlapping the grass. But we're making it angled towards the right and then kind of up and around the boot. So and these are angling the opposite direction. So this one, kind of the same thing, but we're going to make these kind of sway towards the left and then kind of grow outwards and a little bit around the boot, but nothing below the boot is going to be overlapping. So I'm going to actually gradually bring this up and kind of sway it around. So the grass blades are a little bit higher on the left and the right of his boots. Same thing over here. They're curving around the boot. So that's our first layer, which is a dark green color, and we're going to go over this with a lighter green color. So without rinsing the brush, grab some yellow and brilliant yellow green. So you're going to kind of mix that together on your palette. Now, if your brush is overloaded with too much dark green, you might want to go ahead and either wipe it off or rinse, because this should show up as a lighter green layer. And we're not trying to cover all of our darker green. We're just trying to create a second layer, and this is our lighter layer. And then you want to start kind of taking your brush and slightly overlapping some of the bottom of the boot. So you see how some of that green is starting to overlap. So that's going to make it look like that foot is either all the way on the ground or just about ready to touch all the way on the ground. But the grass blades are enough to kind of overlap that part of the boot. And then create your lighter grass blades on the left side. So these guys are swaying more towards the left. And then we can do some of our longer grass blades that kind of curve around the boot on the left. I'm going to go back and add some darker color now. So grabbing the green and then just going back over this heel a little bit more with some more little grass pieces overlapping, but I don't want to completely cover the boots. I still want the majority of that boot showing without the grass covering it. A little bit of black in there to create some darker green again. And then I want to just make sure that there's a lot of dark, especially towards the very, very bottom. So I'm just going to do smaller grass blades down here at the bottom. Make sure all that blue is covered. This is like the thatch of the grass, the darker, thick part of the ground. And I'm not bringing this up too high. I'm just doing the dark closer to the ground. So I'm actually going to add just a little bit more black in there. It's nice and dark, just on the bottom edges. Next, I am using our 4 round brush in the brilliant yellow green to do the polka dots. So you don't have to do polka dots, but I'm generally a fan of polka dots. It just really adds to the cuteness of this painting. So basically, just medium-sized circles kind of all throughout his pants. You can have circles that are off the edge. You can do half circles. That kind of gives it more character when you do that. But they're all pretty much the same size and very, very simple. Just outline your circle and fill it in solid with your brilliant yellow-green. If you're doing a different color polka dot, you might want to kind of pay attention to like the opacity of the paint. So brilliant yellow-green is generally an opaque color. That's why I don't have to paint these white first and then go back over them, because there's already white in the brilliant yellow-green color. But if you're doing a different color and it's not showing up against the black pants or the green pants, you might want to either add white into your color or do white dots first and then paint over those white dots. Next, I'm going to paint my clovers. So I'm going to do 3 clovers that are growing up through the grass, starting with their stems. So this is the number 4 round brush, and we either need to go dark or light. I'm going to go dark so that this stands out. So very, very dark green. So mix a little bit of black with the green and kind of thin it down with water so that our stem can be nice and smooth. So we're just painting a long kind of wavy stem that's going up very high. And then you're going to paint 3 hearts. So let's start by painting this heart. It's going towards the left. So I'm just outlining the shape of a heart. So there's our first heart. And then we can do our second heart. It's kind of angled towards the right. And then our third heart. So that's kind of a simplistic way to do clovers. And then just fill in your shape. So this is just the dark green color, the hooker's green hue mixed with a little bit of the black, whatever's on my palette. We can also vary the color of the green. So we can actually do some lighter green in there that mixes with the darker green. It does look nice when you kind of vary your green so that maybe the light's hitting that clover differently. So it's lighter on some of the leaves, darker on the others. We kind of blend some lighter color into this darker one. So that's basically how I do my clovers. So we can go ahead and do another little guy. So I'm going to make sure my paint is just a little bit thin and then twist the brush because I'm going to do a very thin line for the stem and something that's kind of curving up. And depending on how much space you have over here, you can do your hearts and have them kind of angled wherever there's blue sky that's left in this area. The same thing, just kind of do your heart. So this one I'm actually going to draw the heart out first and then paint it in. If you wanted to do a 4-leaf clover, you would just add a 4th heart in there and kind of angle them so that they all fit. And then we can do our second heart. And then we are going to do our third clover. So again, depending on what space you have, you just want to kind of curve your stem and then do your 3 little hearts. So you can add more if you want. If you want to do 2 on each side, make it more symmetrical, you can do that. I'm going to go in and add some lighter kind of curved paint strokes in here with the white mixed with green, just to give our little clovers, little shamrocks, some character. It's just the lighter green to kind of highlight them. I'm going to do a little bit of outlining next. So I don't recommend outlining everything in this, but just some areas where you think might need a little pop of outline. For example, I am outlining with the 4 round brush and the black, very, very loosely, very thin line, just the bottom of his boot heel. And it just gives it a little bit of pop down there. And we can do some more outlining later. I'm going to do a little bit more grass in here. So you might decide you really don't need more grass, or if you do, you can, I'm just going back in with some lighter color in here to add some lighter grass blades, fill this up a little bit more. And then I'm going to show you how to do the rainbow. So the rainbow really adds such a colorful pop to this because there's a lot of green. Obviously, it's a St. Patrick's Day painting, a lot of green in this painting, but the rainbow really, it just makes it look so much more adorable. I think this is optional. It does add 3 more colors to your color palette. So if you're trying to simplify this painting, you don't have to do this. But let's start with the red. So this is Cad Red Medium. You can use any red. It doesn't have to be this one. And I'm using the 12 Bright brush for this. So this is dry brush style because we want our rainbow to be a little bit translucent. So kind of see-through. We want to see the sky through it. Add just a tiny bit of red to your brush. You can even wipe it off to make sure that there's only a little bit of red on your brush. And I did this on both sides. I almost just did a rainbow on one side, but I decided to continue it on both sides. So just kind of an arc on both corners with the red. And see how it's very see-through? That's because I let that brush barely skid the surface of the canvas because the brush was dry. There wasn't a lot of paint on it. You get a very dry stroke out of it, and that's how you do a dry brush stroke. So let's go to our orange, and without rinsing the brush, grab a little bit of the primary yellow, or without rinsing the brush, grab a little bit of primary yellow, mix it with your red, so you'll get orange. Red and yellow make orange. And then do the same thing. So with each of these colors, I'm letting them kind of slightly overlap. So this orange, same technique of the dry brush, but it's also slightly overlapping that red. So we're going to rinse the brush to go to our yellow. Rinse, dry, and grab just the yellow. I recommend also adding white to your palette. So mix yellow and white together. That is really going to allow you to have a bright yellow for this. Dry brush style, let that gently overlap your orange. Then without rinsing the brush, we can grab green, whatever green is on your palette, any of that green, the light green, the dark green. It's okay if our yellow mixes with it. Go in there and do your green layer. Let that gently overlap your yellow. And we have to rinse when we go to blue. So let's pick any blue. I decided Cobalt Blue. If you want to use like a phthalo blue or whatever blue you have available, that's fine. Rinse the brush dry. Grab your Cobalt Blue, and again, dry brush style for this. Only a little bit of color on your brush. Wipe it off. And then just barely let that skid the surface of the canvas. I still want to go for like a curved rainbow, so I'm going to take this and kind of curve it down now. So it's a kind of bigger, so we kind of had that bow of the rainbow. We do not need to rinse for our indigo, so let's load Dioxazine Purple on our palette, and let's mix blue and purple together to create our indigo. So there's That's Dioxazine Purple mixed with Cobalt. And then dry brush that to let it gently overlap your blue. And then we'll rinse and we'll do our purple layer. So with the purple, I'm going to do dioxazine mixed with a little bit of white. That white is going to brighten your purple up, so it'll look different from our indigo color. So there's our purple, our violet, and we have our rainbow. The final thing we're going to add to our painting is our daisies. So we can just skip the daisies if you want to simplify it, but I felt like there needed to be something down here where all this green is. So quick little highlight down here with the white, and then I'm going to do 5-petal daisies. So these are going to be very simple, non-realistic daisies. We don't need to go into super detail with them. And so we have titanium white. I'm going to paint the petals first. You can paint the center pieces first if you want. I'm going to do little 5-petaled flowers. And they're kind of angling different. So see how they're kind of, this one might be angling that way. This one's angling down, angling down. For the most part, the same size, unless you want to kind of make the daisies look like we have the side view of the daisy, but I was really just going for simple pops of white flowers in this area without making them too realistic. So I'm going to do 2 daisies on the left and 1 on the right. If you want to do more, you can. Then I'm going to do the centers without rinsing the brush. Just grab your black and just do like, you can either paint a circle or you can dot a circle. Again, we're going for simple, non-realistic daisies here. I'm going to rinse and actually go back over this with yellow and do like little yellow dots. So we have dark, but then we have these little yellow dots. And now that I have black and yellow on my brush, I'm just going to do yellow and black dots on the other 2. So when you stipple your brush, that just means you're dotting. That creates that little texture in the middle, and I'm going back with black dots on the yellow ones. And then you don't have to do stems, but I felt like I wanted to. So I'm mixing a lighter color so that this would stand out. If you want, you can go darker so it can stand out. So I'm just grabbing the light green, a little bit of white, and just doing stems. These actually could be shamrock flowers. They're kind of similar in the size, which are also little 5-petaled white flowers. And we can do, if they're shamrock flowers, they wouldn't have these leaves, but we can do the leaves. Maybe those are extra pieces of grass. But I did do a second layer of white paint over the flower petals. And that is it. This is the conclusion of how to paint dancing leprechaun legs. I had so much fun with this painting. I have it displayed with my St. Patrick's Day decorations right now. Thanks for watching, and thanks for painting with me.